Today, we're looking at two really important sources on modern slavery here in the UK. First, we're going to dig into the latest official government data, which paints a pretty startling national picture. And then we'll zoom in on a brand new report from a frontline charity that reveals a crisis happening right now, pretty much hidden in plain sight. All right, let's get right into it. So let's start with this number, 5,690. Just let that sink in for a second. That's how many potential victims of modern slavery were referred to the UK Home Office in just one 3-month period this year. And look, to be crystal clear, this isn't just another statistic. It is the highest number of referrals ever recorded in a single quarter. Ever. It's a historic and, frankly, a deeply concerning peak. It tells us this crisis isn't getting better. It's actually getting worse.
Okay, so to really get our heads around what's driving this, we first need to look at the bigger picture, the national picture, using the government's own data.
That record number we just saw, it didn't just come out of nowhere. It's actually part of a staggering 32% increase from this same time last year. The trend is obvious, isn't it? It's going up, and it's going up sharply and consistently. So, who are these potential victims? Well, almost a quarter of them are UK nationals. Yep, they're the single largest group. After that, you have people from Eritrea and Vietnam. And what's really telling here is that referrals for both UK and Eritrean nationals are also at an all-time high. This isn't some faraway problem. It's happening right on our doorstep.
And how are people being exploited? Well, the data shows this really stark difference depending on how old you are. For adults, the most common thing we see is labor exploitation, basically being forced to work. But for kids, it's a different story. It's criminal exploitation, with over half of all referrals for children falling into that category. This is where you see things like county lines, where vulnerable young people are used by gangs to move drugs around.
Now, all of these numbers and all of this data gets funneled through one main system. So to really understand what we're looking at, we need a quick primer on the official process itself. It's called the National Referral Mechanism, or the NRM for short. So in a nutshell, it's a 4-stage journey. It all kicks off when an official first responder, that could be the police or maybe the local council, spots someone they think is a victim and refers them into the system. The Home Office then makes a quick initial decision on whether there are reasonable grounds to believe them. If that's yes, the person gets access to support. And then finally, much later, a conclusive grounds decision is made, which is the final official verdict. It's the pathway from being identified to, hopefully, getting help. So this official data, it gives us the sheer scale of the problem, but it leaves you with a massive question, doesn't it? Who are the actual people behind these stats? And where, in what parts of our day-to-day lives, are they being exploited? To try and answer that, we're going to turn to our second source. It's a new report that puts one specific UK industry right under the microscope, the hospitality sector. This deep dive comes from Unseen, a fantastic anti-slavery charity that actually runs the UK's modern slavery helpline, and because they're on the front line, they get this unique, unfiltered view of what's really happening on the ground, in restaurants, hotels, and cafes. And what they found, well, it's pretty shocking. In just 18 months, their helpline identified nearly 550 potential victims of modern slavery working just within the UK hospitality sector. But this is the figure that honestly made me do a double take. Unseen found a 7,400% rise in reports of potential victims who are working in hospitality on skilled worker visas. I mean, that's not a typo. It is an absolutely massive, sudden explosion, and it points to a very new and very specific weakness that's being exploited. A surge that huge doesn't just happen by accident, does it? The report shows it's all part of this unfolding crisis that's directly tied to the visa system and the kind of control it can give to exploiters. And this quote from Unseen's deputy CEO, Justine Carter, really hits the nail on the head. She says they've seen this exact playbook before. What's happening in hospitality right now is an echo of a crisis they first spotted in the UK's care sector. People are promised a brilliant job, a new life, but the reality when they get here is something else entirely. So how do exploiters keep people trapped? Well, the report lays out their toolkit. There's financial control, with victims often carrying these massive debts, £18,000 on average from illegal visa fees. Their housing is often tied directly to their job, so if they complain or try to leave, they're instantly homeless. And holding it all together is the emotional abuse and the constant, terrifying threat of deportation. It's a complete system of control.
Right. So we've got the huge national statistics on one hand and this incredibly detailed report on the other. Let's pull these two threads together and see what story they're telling us. And this is where it all just clicks into place. Remember the government data? It told us that labor exploitation is the #1 issue for adults across the country. And what does the unseen report show us? It shows us exactly what that looks like in the real world. People not being paid properly and being forced to work ridiculous hours in our pubs and restaurants. The on-the-ground reality is a perfect living example of that national trend. And this really is the most crucial takeaway. Those abstract, record-breaking numbers we started with, they aren't just figures on a page. They represent real human beings being exploited in hotels and kitchens up and down the country, places we all go to, often without a second thought. So that leaves us with one final and I think pretty vital question. When the government's own official data and the reports from charities on the front line are both screaming that this crisis is growing, what and who are we all missing right there in plain sight?